Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of the Beaker, the weekly show about the design, ducks, and strategy of Keyforge, everyone, and I mean everyone's favorite unique deck game. I am JT Russell, the Bandit Survivalist, and I should let you know that tonight I've got with me a man who, legend has it, if you say his name 3,457 times, Michael Keaton shows up to play a Whirlpool game with you. I haven't tried it.
Wow. If that's true, which I'm going to find out as soon as we're done recording, I will report back because who doesn't want to play a game of Whirlpool with Michael Keaton?
Just 3,455 times more to go. No, we haven't said quick draw yet. Okay,
Okay.
3,456 times to go. You've got that reference, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I did, but you
Okay,
mean the Beetlejuice
there you go.
reference?
Okay, we're working on our credit.
I only said it once.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. There's like a new movie out now ish. Is there?
Yeah, spooky season, came out.
Oh, spooky season gets you again.
Yeah,
I gotcha. I gotcha.
yep.
Um,
I don't. If I've seen the original, I was a kid and I don't remember it. Um,
hmm
so they remade it, and I'm not going to see this one either. So
I definitely saw the original. I couldn't tell you how many times. Not like, one of those movies that was like watched on repeat for me as a kid, but
I mean, it wasn't The Princess Bride.
it wasn't The Princess Bride. It wasn't like a Star Wars, right? OG
Wasn't
episodes
Goonies.
4 through 6. I didn't watch the Goonies that many times
Oh
either.
man, I was testing you.
Yeah. I I had a young childhood of people saying, "Hey, you guys," at me. I'd be like, I'm here. I'm ready. What's up?"
At least you knew what that meant. I mean, at least you remembered that part of it.
Yeah, yeah. I think I found my way to the Goonies, to actually watching the Goonies sometime later, like much later, because there was a magic deck that made a riff on it, blah, 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 on the Truffle Shuffle. I don't know, which wouldn't fly today today when they're making movies, but
Eh,
you know, it was good for the day, and there was a magic deck that made reference to it, and looking up where that deck's name Genesis resided, I found my way to the movie. So
I like it.
yeah. Hey, welcome folks in the chat, Clog and Miggy and Floximal. How we doing? It did take an unexpected turn, Floximal. You got to be ready for those jabs and those hooks. We don't pull punches here in the Sloppy Lab.
We'll do anything it takes to gain a tempo here in the conversation.
Oh, hey, yo, hey, Data Forge stream. Let's get sloppy indeed. Yes. Well, I grabbed the initiative, but maybe Quick Draw, you want to tell us what we're going to be talking about on this fine Wednesday evening at 9:30 Eastern Time?
Yeah, so tonight we are talking about tempo and initiative in games, two very related uh, concepts that can be applied differently in different games. So we'll talk about what they mean in Keyforge, starting with some examples of other games and definition. This was your idea from actually 2 years ago. This was like a season one idea that's been brewing for a while, and we finally get to it. So why don't you tell us some definitions for tempo and initiative?
I'll do my best. It's actually very interesting and probably telling that it was been on our backlog for so long. And I'm glad we're getting around to it. It's a hard thing to describe for or to relate to Keyforge, or at least less natural than some other games. I don't hear that many folks talking about tempo with respect to Keyforge directly. Um, so I've talked about tempo a lot, or thought about tempo a lot with in terms of chess or Magic the Gathering, and so in those settings, I think about tempo, or a move with tempo, as an action or move that advances my own game plan, develops my own position, while also forcing you to react to what I've done. So, in absolute terms, I might say, like, I'm moving one turn towards my goal and maybe forcing you to either stutter at the same position in the race, as it were, or even take a step back. And we can go back and forth with that, right? So especially in chess, you'll hear folks say like, oh, okay, I developed this piece and made a threat while developing, so I've kind of forced you to respond to my threat, but you may, respond to my threat in a way that also lets you advance. So we can kind of go back and forth. But in general terms, that's the idea at a high level. Moving with tempo or a tempo positive play is one that lets me advance my own position while forcing you to respond to what I've done. So I'll just, yeah, pause there for a sec. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, and then initiative is very related to that. They're distinct though. So initiative is really like you described it as like a binary thing where you either have the initiative or you don't. And if you don't have it, your opponent has it. You can take it back and forth by gaining tempo or gaining tempos, like as a tempo or gaining tempos. And so the tempos are kind of incremental, and you can gain them over time through different turns, and eventually it comes to a tipping point where maybe you take the initiative from it. So initiative is something that when you have it, you're forcing your opponent to respond to you. Maybe that means you're ahead in the game. Maybe it means you're checking for key three. Maybe it means you have a witch on the board. But all of those plays leading up to it could be the tempos that you gain until you finally are able to take the initiative.
Yeah, and to kind of distill it down even further, having the initiative really just means that I'm in a position to be deploying threats, to be attacking, and you may kind of wrestle it back from me by counterattacking. That's a thing you can do, but yeah, it might mean that I'm in a position to be making a check for key three when you're not on check to key three, and now you just have to, like, you've gotta take me off my check before passing the turn or forging a key on your own turn with a key cheat or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of a state that I'm in, or yeah, kind of a binary state. I've got the initiative. I don't have the initiative. I almost think about initiative as being the one who's kind of leading the dance as the game progresses, right? So you can fight me for it. You probably should, but that's how I think about it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned that it is harder to define it in KeyForge than it is in other games, mostly because like when we talk about chess as an example of a game that they talk about tempo and initiative quite a lot. Go is another one that I have a very small amount of experience playing Go, and I can talk about it in a bit. But those are the very turn-based games where it's like you take one little move and that's your turn.
Hmm.
KeyForge has a lot more nuances within a turn, and it makes it harder to define like what these plays are. So I think as a means of building up towards what we think this is in KeyForge, why don't we talk about how this is defined and specific examples from other games that people may be familiar with, like chess, right?
Right, right. So chess, especially in the end game, it's very easy to see, and you'll hear tempos talked about as sort of a discrete quantity, right? Like I gained one tempo, or I gained a tempi, or I'm a tempi behind. People will say tempi, and I'll be like, oh, are we making like tempura or something? I don't know what's going
Well,
on.
tempo comes from the Italian word for time,
Hmm.
and tempi is the plural form of tempo,
Yeah, or Latin if that's your jam.
or Latin if that's your jam.
Oh, is this true? I actually, I'm shaming myself as having previously been self-declared as a Latin scholar. I believe that the root for confetti comes from the Latin root for time, because it takes so dang long to make and clean up.
Don't think that's true.
Well, we'll see. We'll have to get our sloppy fact checkers on that one.
Yeah.
But in chess, it's very natural, right? Because your turns are these discrete things where you take one action. Again, it's a little bit harder to quantify in Keyforge land, because yeah, you do take one turn, and winning is measured is a result of how many turns it takes you to forge that third key. Who wins the game is the person who forges three keys in fewest turns. But you get to take many more actions, and you can talk about measuring your distance towards that supposed third key in distances that are a little bit more fluid, less discrete, I guess, than in chess terms, right? Like in a chess endgame, you can say, yeah, I'm threatening right now a checkmate in like 5 turns, right? And like it's not 4 turns and then maybe I don't know, I flip the wild wormhole and something happens and it's actually 6 turns, right? It's actually like, no, like I'll move here, move here, move here, and I've got all the information. I can actually count things out. And so you can really talk about trading off turns with threats very, very directly, right? And so in chess it's very natural. Keyforge is a little bit tougher, right? Because like we were saying, a turn has a lot more moving pieces, even though from start to end you can think about as sort of a single single action. Your whole turn is a single action, but you're taking a lot of smaller actions to kind of compose it, and you're not always making this covering the same amount of ground in the kind of metaphoric race on a Keyforge turn as you would in, say, a chess turn, if that makes sense. But conceptually, it's the same thing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you mentioned like in a chess game, maybe you have like mate and five. Maybe they have something they can do about it, but they have to recognize that, and and that means that you have the initiative. If there is like a direct line for you to take, unless they do something about it and respond to your threat, that means you do have the initiative, and they're going to need to not only stop that, but try to gain some tempo to take the initiative back from you, or you're just going to continue to threaten mate in X number of moves.
sure, sure. And good questions coming in from the chat. Yeah, one of the things that I hope we'll try and do this evening is, scratch at what do people mean when they say this is a tempo deck or what is a tempo deck. Um, so yeah, we'll get to that one. I like that. That's a great question. The other place that I have been familiar with this term in the past, or have thrown this term around in the past, is with Magic the Gathering, and like Keyforge, a Magic turn is composed of lots of different actions. So it's not like chess where you pick up a piece, put it down, and that's it. One single action to make a discrete turn. Lots of little actions combined together to make a turn. And yes, sure, your opponent has interaction points throughout, leaving that aside for a moment. But one thing that Magic has to its advantage in terms of defining tempo in relation to the game is the resource system, right? So you play spells by paying mana, right? So in Keyforge, all your costs are opportunity costs. I think I want to credit Karen for kind of saying that first of Swindle fame, but I could be mistaken there. It's definitely not me. I probably think I heard it first attributed to her. So if I'm wrong, apologies there. But it's a little bit harder to kind of talk about terms like tempo and initiative when all of your costs are opportunity cost. Because yeah, I can't think about how much mana I have to pay again to replay a suite of creatures. I'll just play them the next time I get to call that house. However, if you're thinking more in terms of how many turns this sets me back in development, or how many turns this pushes me back from being able to reach key 3, that's really where we get at. And I was just thinking about this before we came on. We've talked a lot about Keyforge in the past, as a game where all the costs are opportunity costs, and that really does parallel very nicely with chess, right? Every time you take a turn in chess, you don't have to pay ink or mana or whatever, right? You just decide on a piece. You can play any piece on the board you want, and the only cost that you have to pay is not moving any of the other pieces in any of the ways that you could have possibly moved it. So in that sense, yeah, there's a lot of interesting overlap in terms of the sort of resource system of the game.
Yeah, definitely agree. Like I I haven't played Magic in a very long time. As I was reading up on this topic, there are other card games like Hearthstone that use this concept as well. I think Hearthstone does have costs, casting costs as well. Does it not?
I'm gonna say yes, and then we'll get the sloppy. The
I think it
sloppy.
does.
I have no
But
idea.
there is, you're right though. Like that's a good point to think about is that the opportunity cost, like like you can just replay something. If they like bounce something back to your hand, you can just play it again the next turn. You're not like in Magic where if like something bounces in Magic, they have to spend more resources to do that. So there is a difference in the tempo gained by those kind of plays with Keyforge versus other games. But you're right that it does parallel chess and Go as well by like not having anything but an opportunity cost. If you take one turn to do one thing, you're foregoing some other actions that you could take. Um, the parallel to Go, like the interesting thing with Go to me is like again, I am not a Go expert. I haven't played for many years, but this is a concept that I first discovered while playing Go. They have a word for it called Sente, which means that you have the initiative. And so if one player playing Go has the initiative, they have Sente. The other person is always having to respond to what they're doing. And so Go is a game played on a large grid where you're trying to capture territory and surround territory with different stones. And that actually has point values. So like chess is really like checkmate to win the game. That's it. But Go is a game of scoring points by capturing territory. And so you could have Sente in Go by, threatening a large number of points in a certain area of the board. Your opponent has to determine, should I fight that to reduce what they're gaining there, or when is the right time for me to try to take the initiative by making a tempo play somewhere else on the board. And you have to understand the point values in Go to understand, like, yeah, this section of the board, like, they're going to get 8 points here. If I can start threatening somewhere else to gain more than 8, I should do that. But if I have to just like kind of reduce their advantage over here and not give them the 8, like maybe somewhere else the only opportunity cost I have is 6. And so you want to try to fight that down until you reach that point where you have the vision to say, like, yeah, now is the time for me to swing this tempo, take it, and try to gain more points elsewhere instead of fighting them in this one arena where they want me to fight them in, right? Um, Go is interesting because like this term sente is known by Go players, and they have a lot of words for these type of concepts that we talk about. Where like it's not just like in chess. I played chess growing up. I never really learned about tempo and initiative. It's more of a concept that's like chess theory, right? Um, but I feel like in Go, it's not part of the rules, but it is much more ingrained in the culture of the game that they have all these different specific terms for initiative, for tempo, for making a play that does not gain you initiative, that maybe it loses you the chance to gain more tempo. They have specific words for this. So with Go is a very interesting thing because it is very much a part of the culture of the game.
Mm. Hmm. I'd love to get more into Go. It's a game that uh, my the farthest I've got with it is learning how to like hold the pieces correctly or semi correctly, right? Because there's a very specific way. Uh, Maybe you don't. I don't know if you have to. Is this like you have to do it, or just like if you know, you know, this is how you hold the pieces, right? And you place those stones on the
Yeah.
board. Yeah. Okay.
There's another good question in the chat. So let's clear something up here. So Foxmall is asking, like, is it fair to say, like, is tempo the same as advantage?
So this is where it gets a little bit mucky, a little bit mucky and murky. I don't know. Though both of those things, with respect to Keyforge, right? In Magic, say I can kind of see the tempo gained when I deploy a threat. Let's say I play a creature, Mana War. Let's pick one out. It's going to come into play. It's going to be a body on the board that I can use to attack, block, what have you. Uh, and when it comes into play, I'm also going to send a creature back to your hand. So I've deployed a threat, and I've also sent something back to your hand where you're going to need to spend more resources to send it back to the board. Um, Now in Keyforge, it's hard to separate like expected amber and disruption and even efficiency from tempo, because these things are so interchangeable in how they interact with the resourcing of the game, the opportunity cost. That's kind of the one way you pay for things. So I think it's a little bit hard and it gets down to a little bit semantics. But I wouldn't just equate advantage and tempo, right? So I would say they're not the same. Thinking of a good example, one of the cards that I think illustrates this well. Actually, I have two kind of good examples. So Hysteria is a card that I think can be used in some kind of high impact tempo swingy turns, turns where you gain a lot of tempo. So I might play this card, and if you have a board of mixed house creatures, you've all of a sudden got a hand that's clogged up with creatures of different houses, and you're going to have to spend a couple turns just clearing out your hand, right? So playing this card made your journey through development 2 turns longer, 1 turn longer, and that was a kind of tempo boost. Did it gain an advantage? Like it did in that sense, because gaining tempo is advantageous for me. Does it mean that I'm now advantaged in an absolute sense? Not necessarily, but I think a positive tempo play or turn in Keyforge is advantageous, but I wouldn't say that the person who has the advantage or the upper hand necessarily has tempo on their side or has like,
Yeah.
you know what, does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I would say that advantage is probably closer linked to initiative. If you have the initiative, you kind of have the upper hand, but you can be behind, you could not have the initiative, and you can make good tempo plays, but you still don't have the initiative. So just making tempo plays does not mean that you're ahead. It doesn't mean that you're advantaged. It doesn't mean that you have the initiative.
Mm. And I think it's really tough too to kind of tease apart tempo and initiative. Rector would not be an episode of Bottom of the Beaker if we didn't talk about Rector, right? Is a deck that really illustrates the power of taking and holding initiative to me, right? So Rector is a deck that's chock full of threats, chock full of threats. And even from turn one, when you look at this list, you're like, okay, I have to probably make mulligan decisions based on my ability to answer a witch, right?
Mm.
Even then, you can feel that Rector has the initiative because it's always in a position to deploy a threat that you're going to need to respond to immediately, and it really wants to grab that initiative early and then hold it throughout. And if it falls behind, it's going to likely be in a little bit of trouble, or at least that's when it can get into trouble. But that's kind of its game plan. It's like seize the initiative, hold it throughout the whole game. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily making a ton of like tempo plays, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I think it is making tempo plays though. Like, the Dusk Witch is a tempo play, right? And they have to go out of their way to address that usually. And then if they do, maybe they go out of their way and they just play a single card and they kill it and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they go right back into Untamed and you play the regrowth, you get it back, play another card, drop it again. Like then what do they do? Like it really takes the initiative by making those plays. And I think we should again like look at tempo in Keyforge in terms of an entire turn,
Yeah.
not as specific cards, not as specific actions that you do. Like you asked me earlier before the show, like is playing a Dust Pixie gaining a tempo? And I would say the answer is no. It depends on what else you do in that turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because tempo in Keyforge, I think, is really about the full turn. Like you can look at specific cards that might help you gain that tempo, which are like the witches that we've talked about. But you really have to look at it in like the vacuum of the whole turn. If my entire turn is gaining 3 amber and doing nothing else, just playing 3 pips, like I wouldn't call that a tempo. I would call that probably losing tempo, honestly, because you're not presenting any threats unless you're checking for an important key. Um, so we should think of this in concept of the whole turn as well, and not
Mm-hmm.
just with regards to like specific cards.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'm gonna edit out what I said before. That was dumb. But I think the key here too is what you're hammering or homing in on, forcing your opponent to diverge from their typical development or their typical plan to respond to what you've done. So playing a Dust Pixie, yes, moves me closer to the goal, the 3 key goal line, but you're just going to keep going on with your turn as you were planning to anyway. And so I've developed, but I haven't hindered your development, and so we're just kind of both keeping pace normally, as opposed to me taking an action that pushes me forward while also forcing you into a detour.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But as another example, like maybe that Dust Pixie is gaining a tempo if the deck also has 2 Nature's Call in it and no regrowth. If you have the Nature's Call or a Hysteria or something like that to bounce that Dust Pixie back,
Mm-hmm.
having it on the board is itself a threat. And so you may want to handle that unless they have like if it's a deck that has no Nature's Call, no way to bounce, but they have regrowths. Just you want to let it go. Putting it in the discard pile would then kind of present that threat for the opponent. So you have to kind of understand what their deck is trying to do. You got to have the empathy, of course, and the cards themselves can present different tempos or threats depending on what else is supporting it in the deck.
Yeah, I think I'm showing a little bit of my MTG bias here, because at least in that context, I tend to think of tempo more as uh, setting you or resetting something that you had done previously, and then forcing you to kind of like spend resources again to get back to where you were. Um,
Hmm.
but but in
I
Keyforge
think that's
world,
valid.
I mean, I think that's an absolute way to do it. But I probably wouldn't think about like playing a must answer creature as necessarily a tempo play in the MTG world. I don't know why, but I just wouldn't have talked about it that way. But I mean, I see the cases being valid for sure.
Hmm. So, like other games, I've seen it said that board presence or board pressure is what creates tempo or initiative. Is it the same in Keyforge? Do you see it the same way?
So, oh man, we were chatting at some point about anticipation and anticipating threats versus just reacting to what's on board. And I think you absolutely can and should uh, use use that sense of empathy. Hello, Astron. See you in the chat, love man. Uh, to anticipate where your opponent's headed, and that anticipation may send you off your planned route to make sure you don't get buried by their threat. So it's very similar to the chess world where I may not be threatening a piece directly, but we both see a tactic that I am threatening that will win me a piece in 3 moves, right? Or maybe there's a trap that will lead to a guaranteed checkmate or something. And that being present, that being there as a thing that you're anticipating, causes you to deviate and account for. And so I think in the same way for Keyforge, right? I may not necessarily just be responding to the board, but I guess it kind of depends on what you're referring to. The game state at large, like if we're counting board plus discard pile plus things that I know are in hand, archive size, then like okay, sure. But yeah, I think it can be more than just board.
Hmm. I think board can present that threat if it's a deck that wants to use that like a main house and it wants to continue going to that.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely need an answer to that eventually. And if you don't have that answer, then they have the initiative, and it does definitely gain them tempo by dropping 4 creatures, 5 creatures from a single house in a single turn. I think this is where your future planning for the game and understanding what their deck's trying to do comes into play because, I think one of the first things that comes to mind for me with taking initiative and making tempo plays is the board and the board control,
Mm-hmm.
especially board wipes. And if you have the ability to wipe their board and then refill it with your own, maybe with a bunch of creatures right after that, or maybe with the Winds of Death, where you're presenting that threat of 8 creatures coming from your archives next turn. Like those things to me are major tempo plays. Even though maybe playing a Gateway to Dis, you think like you're getting 3 chains, you're slowing yourself down, but you can make that into a tempo play by dropping things on the board after that. But if you're just going into Dis just to play the Gateway to Dis and destroy everything, and then passing your turn, I would not call that a tempo play by any means. That's You're still not presenting any threats. But like if you play the Gateway and then you play an Arise and you drop a bunch of Dis creatures back again, like that's a really big tempo play, I would
Mm.
say.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. And a note from the chat. Good note. Easier to define tempo losses than tempo gains. I think that's true with the caveat that it's kind of the relative distance is what matters. So your loss is my gain in a sense, but it's easier to see the tempo loss for sure because I can kind of see the ground that you've covered, and it's maybe indeterminate how far we have to go. So it's a little bit easier to like kind of kind of intuit or quantify even the amount of ground that you've lost when I knock you back. Yeah.
Hmm. I think it's important to think about delta as well. Like, what's the delta of their board and me getting rid of it? Like, you know, if you take that turn to do nothing but wipe their board and take 3 chains, you're taking away the 5 amber they might have gained from reaping the next turn. So you're taking away that delta, but you're also kind of foregoing a turn of your own to gain something. I just think that one way to measure this, like how much tempo you're gaining with certain plays, certain turns, could be thought of in terms of delta. Like how much amber are you taking away from them? How much are you gaining yourself? How much are you threatening to play for yourself the next turn after that? So I think amber delta could be a good way to have a heuristic to look at this.
Yeah, it's a good heuristic. And there are so many games where the Ember total matters, but there are, I don't know, larger games at play. There's the like me tracking your archive count to see how when you're getting close to the data forge or the key abduction, and that being a thing we're playing around. But in good old Arc Battle Key Forge, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll get to key cheats and reach in a minute. I think that's also something to build on from the last episode. Um, but like, back to the board wipes for a minute. If you have a deck, like say you have a Worlds Collide deck, you have a Logos with tons of archiving, and then you have a Saurian board with an Axiom and a bunch of dinos. But maybe that Axiom is your only creature control you have. It's Worlds Collide after all. You probably don't have anything else. So you might get an early turn where you have like the Axiom and 2 dinos. And maybe you're like, I should just play these dinos and hold the Axiom because you recognize how important that is. But maybe instead you could go into Logos and you could start archiving the Saurian, knowing that that Axiom is your only chance to wipe their board. And maybe what you're trying to do is set up a future tempo play where, yeah, like I'm going to keep dropping these logos. I'm going to keep archiving a little by little, keep archiving my dinos, and obviously save the Axiom. But what you're trying to set up is a way for you to wipe their board and then immediately refill it with dinos. If you just play a few dinos and hold the axiom, then you're giving them the chance to just wipe your dinos and then refill the board. And then you might be stuck in a situation where you have to go Saurian just to play the axiom and do nothing else. So I think there's lots of ways that you can gain tempo by earlier plays and setting yourself up for those, maybe even taking the initiative swings of like an axiom and then refilling the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. A great way to, I mean, I'm sure everybody's had this experience. You're holding that board wipe in your hand and you see your opponent go into a house that's not the house of their board, of their large board, just to deploy more creatures. And you're like, you just wasted a turn. Like, gotcha. You know what I mean?
Yep,
And,
definitely.
and when you have that thought, you have that like, hey, you wasted a turn. That's you basically making a tick mark on the like turns advantage of the like march toward the end line. Totally.
Yeah, and you can also influence them by, making them choose a house that you're kind of enticing them to choose a house that you want them to choose, right? Like maybe you kill just enough creatures from their main house to make them think like, okay, like I can reap for three or I can play four cards from this other house, and they think maybe it's time for me to go to that other house. But what you're doing really is just that. You're baiting them to just drop some more cards, forego some of the value they had showing on the board, just so you can like wipe it the next turn anyway, and they get no advantage from that turn.
Chat calling us out. What about the player who is just trying to bait out that board wipe by going off house to play more creatures? The cat and mouse game goes all the way down. What can we say? Yeah, and this is all comes down to back to anticipation. I don't know. Yeah.
Miggy had a point earlier about the haunted mechanic, and
Hmm.
that being a tempo play and perhaps having initiative. And I think in a Grim Reminders game where both decks are trying to get haunted and utilize the discard pile as an extra resource, I think one player starting off with a boo is definitely a big tempo gain, perhaps to the point of taking the initiative, right?
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And I guess to Murph's point here as well, it kind of gets down to, you know, what's your game plan? Are you deviating to get to haunted, or is this just part of your game plan? Um, yeah, that the deviation and the extra turns getting tacked on is kind of what it comes down to, which is interesting too, right? Because you'd think the best path is always the one with shortest turns to the third key. Um, yeah, yeah. I guess this is getting into a little bit where I wanted to talk about how we define tempo decks, but I don't know if we want to go there quite yet.
Well, maybe. I mean, you mentioned, you know, the shortest path to three keys. Is that always the right thing to do, though? Like you've talked before about your deck Zyger, that
Mm-hmm.
is a very grindy deck. It's a very much control deck. It's got some Infernus, it's got a jar, and it can slowly, methodically, grind a game down, even if it's down 2-0, and just have that inevitability. But you've said yourself that sometimes you have these games where maybe the better play is to just, play it like a normal value deck, play a bunch of creatures, keep reaping, get the value that way. But then other games you need to recognize like maybe the right tempo play here is not for me to just rush and play a fair game, but maybe to try to set up a future big swing of initiative and gain that inevitability.
Totally, totally. Zyger 100% is a deck that I would classify as a grind deck, or as a deck that most often takes the grind role or the control role in a matchup. Yeah, I'm starting to like classifying matchups more than decks per se, but Zyger, at least as I play it, tends to take on that role of wanting to, rather than find its own shortest path, but to lengthen your path. So rather than so if a rush deck, right, is saying, I don't care what you're doing, I just want to get to that third key as quickly as possible, and I'm gonna try and do that by shortening the number of turns that it's going to take me to get to key three. That's pure rush. Pure grind, on the other hand, is saying, I don't really mind how long it takes me, but I'm going to dedicate all my resources to stretching out or lengthening the path that you have to take, with the knowledge that I'm going to do that well enough such that however many turns it takes me, yours is going to be longer. Um, and I think you can kind of back into what a tempo deck is from there, and those being like idealized idealized ideals. I don't know. You know what I mean? Ideals,
Ideals.
ideals. Every deck kind of falls somewhere between those two. Even Zyger, even the rushiest of the rush decks that we know of today, kind of falls somewhere in there. It's just what role they happen to play in a given matchup. A tempo deck is one that's not always just looking for the shortest path and not always just looking to stretch out its opponent's path, but it's kind of wallowing in the middle ground, the beautiful middle ground of sometimes trying to lengthen your path, sometimes trying to shorten its own path, and doing its best also to entice you into detours while you're doing it.
So would you say that a tempo deck is one that presents its own threats, perhaps through witches, but also is has a diverse set of tools that it's able to respond, it's able to present its own threats, sort of like a not a mid range, but more of like a toolbox deck, something that has some versatility to it. Is that
Yeah,
kind of what you would describe as a tempo deck?
has some versatility to it. I think it needs to have sort of an element of that grindiness or that like, and it's not. This is why it's so hard to talk about. Like in a certain context, what you would call disruption we might recast as a tempo play, right? Like how would you call control the weak? You are definitely taking a turn that's not your preferred house call. You're taking a suboptimal turn, a longer path. Is that a tempo play? Is that pure disruption? It's kind of context dependent. Like playing a dust switch is almost surely, well, not almost surely, but at least for Rector, is very often a tempo play. And if you leave it there, well, that might be the end of the game for you. I don't know. But yeah, I think mid range isn't quite right, though it might be the closest that we've come to. But I don't think it's enough to say that I'm playing like middling creatures and, well, I don't know. I may be waffling on this one because in terms of racing, I mean, it's not like I can have some control elements and some aggro elements in like the MTG sense. I need to be slowing you down a little bit if I'm taking a slower path intentionally, and maybe that's just what we call mid range. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's why I like you gave the control the weak example. Like, I do think disruption is a tempo play. I
Mm.
think going into dis and then playing a control the weak or a mark of dis to force them into a house they probably don't want to call is definitely a tempo play because you're getting that chance to maybe utilize your dis board a second time, or maybe you're getting a chance to go back to a different house and you're setting up a bigger library access turn or something like that. I think it's definitely a tempo play to have that disruption and making them go on a detour. So I guess what I'm saying is I believe that tempo plays could be both something advancing your state and presenting threats, and also slowing down your opponents.
So I think it has to be at least a little bit of both, which for the same reason why Dust Pixie isn't isn't something I'd call a tempo. Why playing two Dust Pixies in a vacuum isn't something that I would call a tempo play. Um,
Hmm.
just playing a Mind Barb, I wouldn't say is a tempo play, right? I am hampering your ability to move towards the goal, but I'm not doing it in a way where like you now have to take a longer path, or you have to make a choice to take a longer path to respond to a thing that I did. I kind of like knocked you back as opposed to, and yeah, it's semantics, but as opposed to like forcing you to interact with my threats, I'm just knocking you back. Does that make
I
sense?
think it's yeah, it does, but I think it's context matters.
Context
Like,
matters.
if I play a Mind Barb and I pitch a Silvertooth, okay, that's not a tempo swing. If I play Mind Barb and pitch your only TMTP, that's a tempo swing. So it's not again, it's not as simple as just saying like this card is a gains tempo all the time. It's really about what happens over the course of a turn. Some of that's in your control, some of it's not.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. 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 I don't disagree. I think it does come down to semantics largely, but yeah, I don't know if I'd call Mind Barb. I'd say that the there is a shift in the game and in how far you have to go versus how far I have to go to the third key when I play Mind Barb and I hit TMTP. That's true. I would still call that a purely kind of disruptive thing. But yeah, how you classify something as disruption versus a tempo swing or tempo play.
Hmm.
I suppose you could make a case for kind of these different things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so okay, so let's talk about tempo decks then. Like, what would you describe as a tempo deck? Do you have any in your collection or any specific things that people could look for in there to say like, yeah, this is a tempo deck?
So I think you convinced me that Rector is a great example, right? The one that I had pulled up, actually, we played about it. We played it at one point last season, I believe. This is an AOA deck. Murphy Bishop Lands Protector has a couple Nature's Call. It does have some glimmers.
Mm,
Has an
beautiful.
Exhume, Tesmal, um, and then some Sanctum Deuters, which are often coming in just to provide some taunt bodies for your witches, Witch of the Wilds. So it will play out Tesmal, it will play out Witch of the Wilds just to get you to fight in and get them off board because they are big threats. Allowing a Witch of the Wilds to sit there so that I can glimmer off house is just bad news bears.
Hmm.
There is the potential for a lock. So there's the Glimmer of Nature's Call. This deck features 2 copies of Nature's Call and 3 copies of Glimmer. So that Glim lock is a real threat. It's not always the most commanding position to be in for this deck, even when the lock is happening, because you need some way to make money. But it puts your opponent in a weird position right off the bat, right? Do I go wide? Do I diversify my board? How should I play into this threat? And the redundancy of those Nature's Calls with the Glimmers backing them up means that I get to use those Nature's Calls, use the Hysteria that's in there as well, just for kind of disruptive elements. So I can play out my threats. I can play a Hysteria, then follow it up with a Tesmal. I can play the Nature's Call and follow it up with the Witch of the Wilds. But I'm not just using these Nature's Calls or Hysterias as sort of combo enablers. It is possible, but I'm definitely using them to slow you down so that I can, while I'm also advancing my own turns in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, this one reminds me of now in Stereo's deck, Aegea that he's playing in KTL right now, and I watched his match earlier, where it is that deck is trying to do a similar thing where it's trying to set up the Hysterias and use that as disruption and make them consider taking a turn where they just have to reload creatures. But the interesting thing about Aegea is that it also has a life web in Untamed, which says if your opponent plays 3 or more creatures in their previous turn, you can steal 2. And it's got a couple glimmers. It's got a Nepenthe Seed, so it has ways to get it back. And so that Hysteria takes on a different life in that deck because you might be bouncing like 5 creatures from a single house, and you're daring them to take a turn to replay them. And if they do, then you've got the life web to steal 2 from them. And if they don't, their hand is clogged with a bunch of creatures, and you still have that threat of a life web there. Or maybe they say, okay, I need to go back into that house and just discard all those creatures you just bounced. So like having that threat of the hysteria followed by the life web can be a massive tempo swing in examples like this. So hysteria and nature's call I think are great examples for things.
Mm. Another way that you can maybe identify what folks might call a tempo deck, and a good question from the chat here from the Cloggin, is there a relationship between these and game flow and sort of game length? Well, if you look at your quote unquote grind decks and you see them ending games on turn, 12 to 16, maybe 20 plus on occasion for folks who are of a similar spirit to myself. And your rush decks, your quote unquote rush decks that are ending turns or hoping to end games in the 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe if things are going really slow. Your tempo decks are the ones that are going to be landing in the middle, in the more like 10, 11 turn range, but also having tools to ensure that your opponent is not able to forge that third key until kind of a similar range. So it's kind of a enough rush to be a threat and enough threats of things of the nature of like Dust Witch to ensure that your opponent isn't just going all out on their own game plan, and it will kind of fall in that middle range.
So I know what everyone's thinking as they're listening to this. They're thinking, I guess if I want a tempo deck, I need to play AOA.
It's a lot of where my examples of, and I pull my examples from there just because it's my favorite set, and I've opened more of it than anything else. But I think there were definitely a lot of tempo or cards that interacted with tempo specifically in there. Yes. Um, Not that there aren't in other sets. Certainly, Dark Tidings. I'm sure you could find an awful lot of cards that interact with tempo. Bend and Ship comes to mind as a stand-in for Nature's Call. That could be used as sort of a combo enabler or as one to gum up your opponent's hand and clear the way for your own threat to be deployed. Yeah, there are going to be lots of options throughout. Every set's going to have them, but I do tend to reach for AOA just because it's so dear to my heart.
Mm. So I don't, I still don't have a good grasp on decks that I would call tempo decks, at least not for my collection. I don't have anything that jumps to mind. So, is there anything else you're looking for outside of like certain witches and the bounce that we've talked about? And let's
Hmm.
let's branch out from AOA here. So,
Mm-hmm.
what else would you think of in other sets that can kind of, you know, define that?
Ooh, good question. I guess if I was going to do a search right now through my collection, I'd probably put a cap on expected amber, and we're gonna use some broad strokes here. Something that's not too high, maybe 22 and under, let's say, has a decent amount, but not a crippling amount of amber control. So it's not threatening to kind of go and win a game, by turn 7, uh, and it's not going to stall the game out long enough to, you know, to just win by sheer attrition, right? And waiting you out. So I'd probably start homing in on the like 23, 24 and under, maybe 22 and under expected amber, maybe at the like 12 and under on amber control, and that's where I'd kind of home in. But yeah, my other example was also an AOA card.
Yeah. You're looking at this in terms of like you're citing arc stats, but what you mean is like right in the middle of the rush grind scale is what
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at as a tempo deck.
I think that's where you'll find the sweet spot for these decks. Yeah, not that everyone that's in there is going to be uh, truly a tempo deck. There might just be some bad rush and bad grind, quote unquote, bad rush, bad grind decks in there. Yeah.
But I do think that like grind decks especially can still be tempo decks because what they're trying to do is, like we talked about earlier, tempo is an incremental advantage or disadvantage that happens after a turn. And so the more turns you have, the more chances there are for these tempo changes to sort of swing the initiative in a game. I actually kind of think that grind decks could have more opportunity for this because the games at Keyforge that I love, and we actually talked about this after the CAGI finals last season. The games I love are the ones where there's like these small decisions that you make over the
Mm-hmm.
course of a game that slowly shift what's happening. And I think what I meant by that is really like these very small tempos that you gain throughout a game. Like I like the games where if you forget to reap with a creature one turn, like you forgot, like you didn't have the optimal ordering on like a universal translator, or you misused your operative espion or something like that. Those like one or two amber that you lost from those minor misplays, like I love those kind of games where you have to be like very technical about what you're doing. And to me, like I see those games that go longer, um, perhaps to the point of grind decks. I see more opportunity for tempo plays in those kind of games.
So all of these decks, every Keyforge deck, every kind of matchup archetype or deck archetype interacts with time in thought about as the length of the game, right? What I would call a idealized grind deck is one that's almost entirely focused on slowing the opponent down, and it kind of wins as an afterthought, right? Like I'll get across the finish line, but I'm going to concentrate on slowing you down. The rush one is kind of saying I'm going to not worry about slowing you down at all. You do what you do. I'm just going to do what I do faster. And then the tempo deck. So if that's push and that's pull, the tempo deck is trying to like push and pull more in harmony. Um, and so
Hmm.
grinding or rushing, like these are both like quote unquote interacting with tempo in the sense that they're interacting with how the game is flowing from either of our perspectives. But I think the tempo deck is the one that's trying to kind of push and pull at the same time in a way that
Hmm.
makes it so that I'm able to cross that finish line just before you do. But I have
Yeah.
managed both sides of the pendulum, if you will. Yeah.
I see now. So you're using it more of like like we talked about before, like you have that toolbox, so like you have the options to dictate the pace of the game and control the tempo of the game, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. Totally. And yeah, I really should find a better example. I will give the last, I will give the last AOA card. Oh, that's also a Vaultmaster card. But I wanted to call this one out because I think folks don't often use the card to its fullest potential. The card I have in mind is Collector Worm. So this is very useful, potent card. It has the ability fight, archive the creature Collector Worm fights, or I guess I should say after fight, and if that creature leaves your archives, put it into its owner's hand instead. 2 power, 5 armor. Folks will very often fight with this card, tuck away um, tuck away one of their opponent's cards, and just leave it in their archives for the rest of the game and say, "Haha, I took away your card. Like I'm clearly winning, right?" But there's another way or an additional way to leverage this card, which is to like take something, maybe take 2 cards of different houses, 2 or 3 cards of different houses, and then give them back to gum up your opponent's hand. So I'm forwarding my plan, clearing out your board, improving my delta, and then also slowing you down later and forcing you to forcing you to pay a premium on those opportunity costs. When I eventually give those things back at a time when you've just cleared out all the cards of a house, and now I'm like, okay, you can have this dirtily shadows creature now after you've played your burst or what have you, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess if I was gonna pull up, for the sake of completeness, a non AOA card slash deck for an example, this is my like go-to mid-range deck in my arsenal. Combo Grieve Cell Warden, the mass mutation Combo Grieve. Uh, it has a decent number of pips. It has 18 pips, only 23 expected amber, which feels about right. It's usually not just trying to play the smash my pips and make those keys game. It really is having some proactive elements. There's the Reckless Rizzos needed to be answered right away. Even Subject Kirby is a card you kind of want to get off the board as soon as you see it. You know, Drekker, when you get a Drekker played, you're not really too excited about letting your opponent go back into Dis to reap with the Drekker. So there are plenty of cards here that you will play out. Captain Val's another one that wants to be answered very soon. Plenty of cards here you want to play out that your opponent's going to go out of their way to deal with, and it's not going to run out the gates and make that third key in 6 or 7 turns, but it has lots of tools to slow you down and to kind of manage that push and pull of the game flow. Yeah.
Mm. I have a pretty similar deck that I've been thinking of the last 10 minutes or so that is actually somewhat similar to Kami Grieve here. Um, Emerald, which is a Worlds Collide deck that has same houses as you have in Kami Grieve, Dish, Shadow, Star Alliance. It's got threats in witches like Lord Invidious. It's got a Kirby, but it also has, Brend and ways to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie, it's got 2 forms of artifact control, so it has ways to answer. Definitely feels like a deck that can take tempo and initiative, um, but it's not really like it's not a rush deck, not a grind deck. It's sort of like right in the middle there, like a mid-range toolbox type deck.
Mm. I know this deck well. This is a good one. Yeah, yeah. I haven't played against Emerald in a long time. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe this could be our adaptive best of one matchup tonight.
that could be.
Combi Grieve and Emerald would be a really fun game.
That would be a fun game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Quick Dress says anything except for the Glimlock deck, please.
no, no. I dubbed the deck like the Glimlock deck and your Tesmal decks. I've
Yes.
dubbed it Kaji is how I describe those kind of decks. Keyforge is JT intended, which is just like you can't do anything. I'm gonna reap with Tesmal every turn until you are bled dry of your hand, and all you have left is the house that I'm calling with Tesmal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or you do the Glimlock, or you do something else like that where you're purging all the cards from my hand, and yeah, that's Kaji for you.
Quick Draw. I am here to forge friendships, as our friend the Cloggin would say. Not keys, first and foremost. Friendship's not keys. And I think you would be less distracted in that pursuit if you had fewer cards you were able to play each turn. So,
Um, I think your goals are misguided. If
ah,
you're trying to play a double Tesmal deck and trying to forge friends at the same time.
mm, well, maybe that's what I've been doing wrong. Could be.
Could
uh,
be.
funny too. I don't know if he's still in the chat here, but Astron had suggested a different deck from my Kagi display. So I mentioned before I cracked a Kagi. I cracked a display of AOA to find a deck to play through the last season of Kagi, and overlooked a true Keyforge as just an intended gem, um, and Astron called it out. And I like after having a very middling result through the deck that I picked from this display in the regular season, it's been like X and O with all but 1 2 O's in the second amber, as I in true fashion just prevent people from playing cards or drawing cards with multiple streaks and Tesmals and these things. Yeah, still
Yeah.
here.
I mean,
Yes, good man.
that's it's important to have that affinity as well, right? Like, um,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about like me. I don't know why. I'm not sure what made you gloss over it the first time, but just because it looks like something that could be devastating and maybe high roll, playing that and adaptive might scare you off a bit. But if you're the kind of person that has affinity for that and knows how to take advantage of those decks and maximize the value from those, maybe maximize the tempo plays from the Tesmals and setting it up right, like it still could be a very good choice.
Mm. That's exactly right though. I was worried about high rolls uh, with the high rolls relating to the disruptive elements. So yeah, hand the deck over and they're like, oops, all streaks, like good luck. They get one of those hands and you're like, well, that stinks. But I think
Hmm.
what really balanced this deck out was its lack of ability to really kind of burst in it, generate lots of amber. So even when those things happen, yeah, like things look grim for a few turns, but then you're like, well, you just had a few creatures, maybe max 3 creatures of one house, and you had to keep calling this house without developing further to really milk it. So I had some time to find my footing, and even though those things look rough, there was a lot more room for interplay, and it wasn't.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Tesmal locks happen, but it ended up feeling like much more of a tempo deck than a true grind deck.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, or at least I'm gonna say that because this is the tempo episode. No.
Right. Of course. Anything else you wanted to touch on with tempo and
hmm.
initiative?
I think I hit most of it.
Oh, I wanted to talk about reach and key cheats
Okay.
from
Yeah, yeah,
last week.
yeah.
Like one of the most obvious forms of having the initiative is checking for key three, right? Like if you have 2 keys and 6 amber, your opponent needs to answer you, whether that is taking you off check or winning the game themselves with a key cheat. But um, it changes a bit depending on what else your deck's capable of doing and the reach that you have, perhaps through key cheats. So checking for key three once you're at like 2 keys and 6 amber, maybe checking actually means still having a key charge in deck and a bunch of untamed pips and setting that up. And maybe your opponent has to recognize like, okay, they have 4 pips left in untamed and they have a key charge. So if I leave them 3 amber, that might be as good as check for key three. And so recognizing what that threshold is could be like having that initiative. Like if they get to 2 keys, 3 amber, that like they have the initiative because like that's enough for them to win the game. And so um, we talked about key cheats and the reach they provide, which is like sort of being able to make these threats um, further, ending the game in a shorter period of time, and having the ability to like see what else your deck is capable of doing with what's remaining in the deck, kind of changes that too. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing with the topic of key cheats that we just talked about a week ago.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah, it comes back to understanding what your opponent is trying to do and realizing that not all threats are imminently present just on the board itself. Yeah. So being aware of
Yeah.
the situation for sure.
Ecto could be the same way. If they have an Ecto charge and maybe they have a Boo, or maybe they already have 20 in discard, like recognizing that as a threat, meaning you have to do something about that. Like they could have initiative just by having, a bunch of Geistoid pips and an Ecto charge left, even if they have no Amber to start the turn.
Yep. 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 Yeah. You've just playing that, or just playing that boo to get them in range, um, or to threaten being in range, puts you in a position where you have to respond, or risk losing the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Totally.
I just kind of wanted to highlight that initiative is not just like checking for a key or being ahead in the game. Like, there's other situations you have to be able to recognize, like mate and five. Like if you don't recognize mate and five, maybe once it gets to mate and four, it's too late. And you need to be able to recognize those situations and um, pivot, gain some tempo, and try to take the initiative before it's too late.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Right on. All right. Cool. Well, with that having been said, I think with that having been said, it's gonna be my new segue to sponsorship land.
To the advertisers.
To the advertisers. Yeah. This episode of Bottom of the Beaker was brought to you by Eureka Body Spray, because Eureka is never part of the strategy. With its breakthrough formula, Eureka keeps you smelling fresh and feeling confident through every intense moment on the Crucible, whether you're unlocking new strategies or making a game-winning discovery. Stay cool under pressure with Eureka Body Spray that's as sharp as your gameplay. So the next time you're forging your own path to victory, make sure it's with Eureka, and the only thing you'll discover is how fresh you are. Indeed. I'm not going to ask if you have any Eureka Body Spray.
I appreciate that. This is why we're
Yes.
so far away right now. We don't record this in the same room.
Recorded safely from the comforts of our own homes. Yes, indeed. Right on. Right on, folks. And I want to also let you know that Bottom of the Beaker is recorded live right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork on Wednesday evenings at 9:30 Eastern Time. You can find recordings of our past shows and other streams over at youtube.com. We are at Sloppy Labwork over there. And for the very best content, 34? No, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. Search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice, and we'll be there with time for you. Indeed. All that and more at sloppylabwork.com. And quick draw, got any words for the folks getting off the final audio stop?
Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you all have the initiative and stay sloppy out there.
Stay sloppy indeed. Yeah, taking a material loss for positional gain could be indeed. Murph, I like where your head's at.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm going to stop the old Zencaster, make the old adjustments over here. Cool beans.
So I got this Ember Skies deck with me.
Ooh,
that is
mama.
Allegedly a Sky Beast deck. So I think what do we call these now? The Sky Beast / Shard decks, or
So this will be interesting. If you get a non-Sky Beast deck, I will be curious to see what else is in it. All the ones that I've seen so far include the shards, and I have 2 decks with all 3 shards in it. And both of those triple shard decks also have 4 copies of Daughter.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 daughters and 3 shards.
4 daughters and 3 shards. Yes.
So you have the Shard of Knowledge then. That's pretty good.
Shard of Knowledge and both of those. Yeah. Strictly better than Library of Babel. Yeah.
Yeah, don't remind me.
Strictly better than Library of Babel.
I have a deck with 2 shards and no Shard of Knowledge, and it has a Library of Babel.
Oh no. Oh no.
I can't tell you how many times I thought, like, why couldn't this be a Shard of Knowledge?
Oh, one of my favorite Shard of Knowledge decks is a triple shard deck, and I think it also features 2 copies or 3 copies of Library of Babel. Let's see what comes up here. Oh, no, my decks, please. Not all the decks. Holy moly. Yeah, Baroness Q Dozenhorn. This deck's a beauty of a deck. 10 artifacts.
Hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 artifacts, all the shards, uh, double library battle. Okay, so you can take a Logos turn where you archive with memory chip, then draw five, and it's just beautiful. Yeah.
And it's a brig deck too.
It's a Brig Deck 2. Yeah, Brig Deck 2 with double Grunt Buggy. And you can do some really fun stuff with, well, fun if you're into Kaji, baby,
Yeah.
where you can, yeah, really jack up that key cost, play your By Night, and if you've orchestrated the battle lines well, use the standardized testing to then drive down the key costs
Hmm.
and take a whole bunch of graph stuff. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yes, indeed. Uh,
Um.
recording stop question mark. I hope so. Oh, just the audio for podcast land.
Oh yeah.
We're still recording on the video side. I hope you're all still there. If not, then quick draw will I. We'll just play for funsies, I
We're still
guess.
there.
So,
Um. So I showed this because I wish I could play this tonight, but it's still not available on TCO. And I heard you're one of the developers of TCO and you contribute. So why haven't you finished Ember Skies on TCO yet?
oh, good question. I'm gonna come clean. I contributed not at all to Amber Sky's development on TCO.
And that's why
Uh,
it's not there yet. It's your
yeah,
fault.
I want to say I am fairly confident in saying that Ned Mike did an awful lot of work there. So shout out to Ned Mike. Give him some love when you talk to them. And I know Dinobot did some as well. I'm not sure who else. If I'm missing anybody, I've been I've been meaning to take a look at the history there. But yeah, I don't know. Non Crucible life has been p intense over in the Russell household and has burned up all of my TCO development opportunities.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair.
yeah.
Well, so we're gonna play a non-Ember Skies game tonight then. Of course, it'll be adaptive best of one.
Hmm.
Um, I think I'm gonna play Emerald.
Okay. Well, I'll play the Cell Warden. That
I
should be
think this will
interesting.
be
Actually.
fun.
Okay. Or I mean, if you pass in the bidding, I'll play Cell Warden. I don't know.
You'll
Ooh,
bring Selward,
I'll
we should
bring
say.
Cell Warden. Yeah, yeah.
Let's see how bad my TCO connection is tonight.
Okay.
Um,
I'll make a new game here. Password
all right,
sloppy.
adaptive
Adaptive
best of
best of
one.
one. Okay. Combo Greaves. Oh, Warden. Very nice. Oh yeah, I've been liking it a lot. Astron. I'm gonna probably put it in my like prime adaptive choices rotation. May even bring it to KFC. We'll see.
I'm at 106 games with Emerald, which is probably like my third most of any deck.
Holy moly! All right,
It's a lot for me.
I'm gonna refresh myself here.
Same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Poltergeist, very nice. Yeah, there's that Lord Invidious. Got the E on the fringes. Got your Library of the Damned. And a Hawk. Taking care of those artifacts over there. Okay. Ooh, what's your most played deck on TCO Quick Draw? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think Anakim.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna fact check myself though. I think it's Anakim though. 150 with Anakim. 106 with Emerald, I said, and 128 with Guadalupe. I think those are my three highest.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people are scoffing because they have 500 decks with a game or 500 games with a deck.
Mm-hmm.
Not me. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to do a quick browse through. I don't think I have many games with anything else.
Hmm.
Kanban 91. All right. Kanban's catching up.
Nice.
Macro Bell at 75. Yeah. Pretty sure it's just those three at 100. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm just making you think that I'm not paying attention to the bidding, but we're both going to bid on Combi Grief.
We knew we were coming here. Not really.
I had a good feeling. I was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Um,
thanks, Fudge.
straight to two. I'll go three.
Okay, 4 from me. $400 games with the DT deck. What was the deck, Astron? Five,
Six.
six, six. He says. Oodalali. Bishop Phoenix. Oofa doofa. I don't know what my most played deck is. I think I'm nearing 200 with Zyger.
Oof.
Which that ain't no rush deck, man. Those 200
That
games.
is that is not. That is a lot of work right there.
Although there are definitely not all games trying to push the grind plan. Man, I'm gonna say 7. You know why? Because I'm gonna go first, and it's just gonna feel like 5. It's gonna be fine. There, Quick Draw goes, baiting me into those high bids again. Every week I come in here and this man baits me, and I bid against the man, not the deck. That's how he gets me.
Well, maybe I'll be as tired as I was last week and just bumble my way through the game.
Should have brought the AOA. The old bumblebirds. Eight chains. Now you're really baiting me. I gotta pass.
All right, well, you will go first. You were right about that.
Yeah, this is the TCO dev inside knowledge. You know,
Yeah.
there's a little hint that you can tell before it declares it who's gonna go
You
first.
know, whenever people say that kind of thing, they tend to people tend to believe you. That
There-
rumor that like people with the pink name like always got the good draws or something like that.
yeah, yeah. There. Mm, so we have been joking about that. There are some really interesting, unfortunate game integrity bugs, uh, which would be like really problematic if TCO was say like used by GG to run like high stakes, lots of money events. But
Oh wow, interesting.
mm-hmm. But cool, going first, and yeah, we're gonna see if how this is gonna work out for me.
Yeah, we shall.
That I'm gonna bump up. Oh man, I should have switched to half size cards. I don't.
I never liked the half size cards.
I prefer the half size cards, but for the longest time, I don't know if it's still the case, but for the longest time, the images for Grim Reminders, uh, there were no half size card images for Grim Reminders, so so yeah, you were just kind of stuck if you
Hmm.
went that way. Um, but yeah, this is the old keep. We'll play the old Lord Invidious. think we.
Well, I got some bad news for you.
Oh baby,
That guy can't reap.
not reaping. Holy moly! It's not a fight
What are you
reap
gonna do with
either.
that Lord Invidious?
Terrible, terrible.
Well, let me just say the TCO gods really like me tonight. I think
Oh, all
this
right,
is this is some fire that I've been drawing with 8 chains.
my man. The fire. Give you some more money, and I think we just jam it. Jam that hawk.
I'm cool with that.
Oofa doofa. Comes out with the right away.
Check. Let's go.
Wow. Hmm. Hmm.
That Invidious was definitely a factor in my bidding. Um,
Yeah,
it can be a real major threat. But that turn one access denied.
it was huge.
I think it's pretty big. Yeah, because I can't really play creatures if I don't have that.
It's true. All right. Do I leave those guys? No, I don't think I want to. Okay. Hmm.
Doesn't feel like a tempo play there, does it?
No, it doesn't feel great. I don't feel great about letting you burn however many chains has it been? 3 chains and be basically at parity on Amber with you a safe house and my Hawk and
Mm-hmm.
discard. Feels bad.
Well, you've got the poltergeist.
I do. I do indeed. Okay. Let's see if we can do things with that. I was nervous to bow too high because I felt like there was a decent chance that Emerald just ran out with a whole board of hmm, like Star Alliance or Dis, and then I would be very sad. I was trying to shed chains looking for C, though there's decent amount of board control there as well.
In where in Emerald?
Mm-hmm. Oh, no,
It's
no,
not as much as you.
in Emerald I was worried about the C a
Oh,
lot.
I'm very worried about the sea in Emerald. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Combo Grieve has a lot of C, but I was worried about going too high and just stuttering out while you
Mm,
play out a Starlines board.
yeah.
Hmm. Interesting choices. Interesting choices. Okay, I think we go shadows here. Yeah, that's bum 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 bum.
That's my first disconnect of the night.
Yep.
Oh, maybe not. No, you're just thinking.
Just thinking. Trying to remind myself where some of these banning folks is. B. There we go. Doing the old mod things. Doing the old moderator things. All right, we'll steal here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll steal again. Special delivery. Awkward. I'm going to regret this, but play the no safety in numbers. Mm-hmm.
Okay, get to 9.
Yeah, 100% running Wi-Fi blocker hacks on quick draw just to get them on tilt. Yep. Yep.
All right.
Okay,
Yep,
to
there's
start,
there's
let's
the
go.
actual disconnect. There it is.
Uh-huh.
Take the archive.
Yeah, that was nice, Murph. That one got flagged before I hit chat.
We've had a few from tonight then, haven't we?
A couple. Must be doing something right. Spammers are taking notice. Oh no. Ooh, survey. Okay.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. That's how you know you made it. Yeah, right. Needs to spam. Okay, there's the Kirby. We're gonna see some friends. Can't be leaving Kirby on a flank.
Probably not.
Probably not. Rizzo, cool. Yep.
And we'll use those lucky dice.
All right. That's the elusive or the damage one.
No
Damage
damage.
cannot be taken. Oofa doofa. Hmm. Borrows in discard already. Rizzo's gonna be hitting me next turn potentially. Man, I can't even smash the Brabble to take away your steal potential. How about that? Okay. I think we just go dis and steal 3 with E. Misery Exploit gets discarded. Hmm. I think I will purge the Misery Exploit.
Seems good.
Yep. And we'll also discard the Bornet, and I think we'll hit your String Grave's not coming back now. Do I want to hit the whale? Or my own Bornet? I think I'll just hit my own Bornet. And discard this Library of the Damned. Yeah, we'll take that String Grave. Okay.
All right, pretty good.
It's a
Pretty good
thing.
initiative you got over there.
It's a thing. Oofa
I think I'm
doofa.
gonna give you a chance to do something to Rizzo.
It's tempting me. Goading me into smashing Rizzo.
You don't have many ways to smash Rizzo. That's the thing. And if you want to smash Rizzo now, if I'm not mistaken, you will need to kill your EE as well. I guess there's one other way you could do it. I'm not here to help you out though.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Going Star Alliance. Stealthy. Stealthy Kirby. And Stealthy Rizzo.
Everybody's pretty stealthy except for that Brabble.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that Lycophene is not.
Lycophene.
That's the
Skirmishy.
skirmish one, not the elusive one.
Stealth mode.
Mm-hmm.
Universal translator.
Okay.
Excuse me. Do I let you get this Rizzo play? I can stop both. That may be fun. So we're going to play Tactical Officer Moon to rearrange your battle line.
Oh, I love when that card does something.
Right. I think we're going to move this Kirby to a flank. That is good enough for now. Yep. Purge that Kirby. Fight the Rizzo to break the elusive. Translator lets Ronnie fight the Rizzo. Medic Ingram is going to ward the E. Okay.
Yep, that was the one way that I thought of that you could still do it, which was the universal translator.
Mm-hmm.
You happen to have it.
Happen to have it.
Let's go shadows here.
Old Bruno, nice. With the capture pip too.
Yeah, I didn't draw any shadows, or I would have called shadows the turn before to steal, but that would have been the only thing I did if I stole two with it there, and I
Yeah.
just didn't think it was worth it.
No, makes sense. Okay. Back into Star Alliance we go. Kirby comes down. And we'll poltergeist this safe house to tuck Ronnie into our archives.
Very good.
Medic Ingram's going to ward the Kirby. Translator's going to let us reap here. Reaps, and yeah, we'll capture onto the medic.
All right, gonna do what I can.
Sounds like a red alert,
Red
maybe
alert.
an Anthony.
Red
Double
alert.
alert. Oofa doofa.
Access denied on which one? Probably the Ingram.
Okay, key for us. I'll take it. I think it is the opportunity maybe to fight off this Brabble. Maybe. No reaps with this Ingram, huh? Hmm. Do we double fight or do we go for a reap? Yeah, so I can fight into an elusive duder to heal up Kirby, get a fight on the Brabble. It's kind of the same as a fight Reap, but one less Amber and 2 damage off Kirby. Don't think that's super impactful. But I think I want to take the chance now to get that Brabble off board. Otherwise, we move. Let's see, other house options. Yeah, that's still pretty cool too. Hmm. Two. Sorry, just like trying to anticipate what I got coming left and what you've got coming left. Yeah, interesting. I don't really want to let you be centering Val either. Blech. Okay. Anyway, yeah, we'll fight into Bruno to heal and ward up the Kirby. Fight into, let's see, finish off Bruno. Brabble. Let's fight into the Brabble. Well, getting's good. Lose that Ember, get the one back, and we'll get to play this Spike Trap. Cool.
Okay. All right.
Let's see if we
Let's
found that
do
Infernus and
this.
Ritual. Yeah.
I did find it. Let's see the right way to do this.
Do this. Find the right way to do this. Yeah, that's nice. Cool, cool.
Let's just get rid of it.
Otherwise, I'm going to get rid of it. Yeah. And a Drekker over there. Fights off Kirby. Interesting.
Probably could have let it live, but if I reap, you might have the other Ronnie by now as well.
Yeah. You may have. Wow. More spammers. What's going on? There must be some sort of something happening. I think this is a good time to Spike Trap and let you steal that Amber.
Did you find both Ronnies?
Yeah.
And you got the extra one too. That's brutal. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could have put the Drekker on the other side to protect the. But that's kind of a weird. I don't know. It was a
Yeah,
weird line.
I wanted the steel one, but I didn't count on you stealing an extra with the Ronnie. So maybe you're right. Now this is a weird place.
Both red alerts gone. Not Oh, and Quintrino Flux. Okay.
I did discard the Queen Trino. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So where's the tempo? Yeah, good question. We are right in that like 10 turn range right now, though. I don't know if we're. We'll see. We'll see. We'll maybe do a recap, or I'll not talk while Quick Draw's trying to think.
I should have killed the Yancey gang. That's what
You
I
can,
should have done.
you can switch it up. I was distracting you. If you want, up to
No,
you.
you weren't. Can I kill the Yancey gang and then fight with the Infernos into the Simon?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's what I should have done. So let's just
You'll swap
add
Peru.
damage
Uh,
and
you, you reaped with the Drekker first, though, probably.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, never mind. Screw it. Uh, that's probably why I didn't do that. I'll let your Yancey gang live.
Okay. These aren't held in libraries. That's true. That's true.
Let's just read. I need to get a little bit of pressure going.
Get some money.
I should have just reaped the turn before instead of fighting the Kirby. I would have actually forged then.
Hmm. Yep. Okay. We're gonna Evil Eye here. Knock one of those amber back. Play a couple duders, and somehow not not go to check there on the shadows. But okay.
Still good.
Still
Still very
okay.
good.
Hmm. Okay.
Chan's not a good one.
Steals two. Nice.
I don't think this matters too much. I think you'll be killing everyone anyway.
I may. Hmm. Oh, interesting. Yeah, this is tricky. You still got. Yeah, so wiping your board is a little bit of a funky proposition. You're going to get to play Val centered. It's not ideal. You still got Anthony coming that I need a way to deal with. We've flipped and I've not seen either, I don't think. Hmm.
You could just reap out.
I could just reap out. I have some other options too. Fighting seems okay. I mean,
You're listening to Cloggin too much.
fighting with Malzahn and Dendrix, always good times. Taxing you is pretty nice. I feel like we are going to see
Man,
some Star Alliance. Yeah,
I think your creature control came really timely this game because I really loved my start. It's just that you did have the creature control at the right times.
I did. Yeah. All right, I don't know if this is the right call, but we're gonna go this way. Um, so we're gonna fight this subtle auto and then move Lieutenant Trigon to the right flank. Let it capture one from you. fight into the Trigon and smash that Anthony out of your hand? Mug. Okay.
Oh, I disconnected.
Yep.
Mug is probably my best card that you could have done for me.
You got Val, Anthony. Let's see. Dark Wave. Essence Scale we haven't seen yet either. Hmm. At least no, I don't think so. Yeah. And is the borrow gonna come back in time for this to matter? Let's be a little greedy. We'll play the Library of the Damned. Okay.
Hey, I got a
Cool.
key. Still in the game.
Key from my man Quick Draw. Okay. There's the Essence Scale and a Dark Minion. Okay. Cool. Soul Keeper. Nice. Why stress about options this late in the game? Which options you mean? You mean that just jam some stuff? Hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let's push and see if we can force that Anthony out of your hand. Ooh. Okay.
Wow.
It's a
You
lot of
just
money.
gave me a bunch of amber.
I did. Oh, did I push you into Obsidian Forge Rain? That would be so sad, but
That would
hilarious.
be really brutal if you did.
Hilarious. Hilarious.
Wow, you gave me 3 amber.
Mm-hmm.
And you discarded your stealth mode.
I discarded my stealth mode. Sure did. Sure did.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I the thing that pushed me over the edge playing that rig lottery was hopefully giving you not too much amber, but enough that you couldn't just smash Brend. Okay. Nice. Nice. No amber on it. Had a really
Yeah,
cool
if I
play
had a,
in mind,
I
but
could have done a lot more there if I had a more Star Alliance creature.
mm-hmm. Oh man. I want to make sure I don't miss the like obvious play if it's potential. No. Don't think that's a thing. Sag. 6-3. Yeah. I really want there would be a way to poltergeist to Obsidian Forge walk off, but
Hmm.
sadly, I don't think I can kill Anthony. Mm-hmm. Just to get the monies. Oh, wait a minute.
It's turned into a close game somehow.
So, Compagrieve, Cell Warden, for whatever reason, is very good at clawing back into games. Like, I don't know why, but it.
I didn't think I was going to be able to.
Yeah, I honestly thought it was gonna be kind of brutal from the opening when my C was coming kind of well timed, but once you shed the chains, like the deck has lots of tools, lots of tools, and can really like make things work, which is pretty cool. Um, Oof. All right. Well, I have a cool Star Alliance turn where I get to flex away Brend and Anthony. Feels pretty good. That leaves you at one amber, three dudes on board. Do you have a way to?
If you have
Hmm.
a way to, which I know you do, but if you have a way to get yourself to 12 amber and take me down to one,
Hmm. So I'm
feels
I'm
like
I'm counting whether or not I need to kill Bren now for the steal, or if I can leave Brend around and smash one of your other dudes to knock you back on Obsidian Forge. I would feel really silly to go to 12 when I guess the 3 steel is better than leaving a dude on board. Yeah, okay. Yes. No in the archives. Yeah, we gotta do 3, 6, and then we'll increase key cost to boot. Yeah,
mm-hmm. Seems good.
seems good. Or don't flux Brent. Yeah, I was I don't know. I think I was trying to think if there was a reason to like not flux Bren there. Um, I think it's better than fluxing, say, in Furnace, so that you can't like I don't know, essence scale a Drekker. Drekker's in discard already. Yeah, or Val. Val, you're gonna get centered. Nice, very nice. Yeah, definitely inevitable this turn coming. Why not 5, 6? 5, 6? Oh, kill Val and that one. Yeah, I think 12 is out of reach of shenanigans to stop, and I think the steal from Brend uh was better than taking Val or Infernus off board.
For sure. Yeah. Um, I think once you killed the Anthony, it was over. Unless, yeah, I was five off from the Obsidian Forge, so I would have needed like five disc creatures, and I didn't have five disc creatures left. Um, the Lyco Fiend would steal an extra, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't nearly enough for me to come close for the Obsidian Forge there.
Yeah, Drekker can come in big as well, so sometimes you'll like play the Drekker or the Fiend.
Well, Drekker's in discard.
Yeah, as in discard, and you'll
Yeah.
get the steal off the Fiend and steal off the Drekker, and then get the yeah. This is so this deck Combo Grieve Cell Warden is my deck of like realizing after the game that I had an Obsidian Forge key that I could have
Yes.
forged, and just like, oh, I didn't see it. Yeah, nope.
Yeah. It does have some tricks with like the steel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm okay with the bid. I think things came together really well for Emerald that game.
Mm-hmm. I was very nervous about its lack of C. I think eight keys I felt comfortable with, but a lot of your real problem, like if you had an early Val, I would have been sweating bullets, because
For sure.
it's
Yeah.
like what Q Flux is the only answer or
And
fights.
she was on the bottom.
Yes, Harbinger.
I Yeah, I had Val and Anthony as the two last Star Alliance cards, and I couldn't go into Star Alliance to play them just because I couldn't have centered Val, and it would just give you the chance to kill Anthony anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
um, didn't get a ton of value from them. Well, no value from Val.
Hmm. So yeah, chat's nudging us to be good doobies. What did we take away from this game with respect to tempo and initiative? Yeah.
I think I think you definitely had the tempo, and or you had the initiative, and I could not gain any tempo after like the third turn, pretty much.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of kept having to answer your board in some way or another. If I had found the Val, or if I would have gotten a little bit of value out of the safe house, for example, like I could have made tempo plays like that, but it didn't come together for me. So I didn't feel like I ever had a chance to gain tempo in
Hmm.
that game. And maybe that's because of the chains.
So you were on the chain deck. Did you ever feel like, or how often did you feel as though I was deploying threats that you had to take not the turn you were hoping to take in order to answer?
There was one turn
Mm-hmm.
when you dropped the um, I think it was the Shadows turn when you dropped the Yancey gang.
Yep.
Um, I think I ended up having to go dis there just to kill the Yancey gang, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what I did, but I knew I had two more discards coming next, and I only had one dis in hand, and I felt like I had to go into dis that turn anyway instead of going into shadows. The shadows would have stolen two, discarded one, played an opportunist, then I could have had a bigger dis turn. But I don't remember the specific reason why, but I was pressured by what you had presented to just go into dis there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I definitely think that chained games like Game Three of adaptive best of three or best of one games uh, really put stress on the notion of tempo and initiative in the early game, right? Like when we were, what was it, turn four, turn three or four, maybe even turn five, and we were both sitting there, zero keys, three amber, four amber, and an empty board. I was like, wow, you more or less burned 5 turns of chains, and I have nothing to show for it but a one amber gain. Like that was feeling pretty bad. I was honestly like, oh boy, this is gonna be trouble. I think maybe your
Yeah,
draws
it
dried up a
was
little bit, but
maybe it was turn two that I ended up checking,
so you
despite
checked on
having eight
turn
chains.
two, and then was it
Yeah.
turn three or four where it was three amber, four amber, empty board, and you had a safe house? I think. Yeah.
Turn three is when you found a way to kill Brent instantly, which is very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think that was like when you took the initiative back. You're like, if you couldn't take me off check there, I think you were in a lot of trouble.
A lot of trouble because I
Yeah, because
was.
I would have went right back to shadows. I would have killed Brend, and you would have stolen nothing. So like being able to take me off check was a big tempo play there. Even though it was the first key, it allowed you to slow the game down, get value out of Brend, get value out of the Ronnies.
Mm-hmm.
And like it took me forever to get my first key, even though I checked for key one on turn two, which is crazy. When did I
Yeah.
get my first key? It was turn. Oh man, turn nine. So I checked for my first key on turn two, and I did not forge that key until turn nine. In turn nine, I forged, and then I went into the ritual play, um, the Infernus. I think I had to use the ritual on.
No, turn 12.
Um,
Turn 12, you forged
oh,
your
you're right.
first key. Yeah. Wow. That's incredible for a 18
That is
pip tech,
incredible.
too. Yeah.
18 pips, yeah. And I checked on turn two and did not forge for 10 turns.
But I think you're right. That early stopping the check really enabled a lot of the other steel um,
Yeah.
downstream. And the when the forges hit, like I was able to kill your Brabble without
Hmm.
without huge backlash. Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, the
Hmm.
turn you played the stealth mode, I was going to vandalize. Um,
Yep.
but that was all I could do, I think.
I don't know if you
Yeah,
would have taken
so
a different turn without stealth mode, but that was the only action you discarded. Yeah.
I had two red alerts in hand, so I would
Okay.
not have gone Star Alliance there.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Did you chain yourself with the red alerts, or were they
no,
not really? Yeah.
no, it was just the order they came. Um, and you didn't build quite wide enough of a board for them to have value until you started warding things.
Mm-hmm.
And the words actually played against you there because
Second red alert hit harder. Yeah.
second red alert hit harder.
Um.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
think you made a mistake. I mean, you didn't know that I was going to have both of them.
Getting both out was okay. I like a little bit of a higher bid, I guess, with Combagrieve because it's got so many pips and it has so much board control. Like,
Hmm. Those were the two main things I thought too.
right. So yeah, maybe they flood the board and you get to negate two or three chains with a well time or a well drawn red alert early on, which is not that huge of an ask. You've got the flux, you got double red alert. Dark wave could maybe do some work, and the whales to pick things off. Maybe take it from a a +3 to a +2 board, and all of a sudden it's not that worrisome. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, but what does Emerald have? Like 10 pips? Maybe 11?
not a ton of pips.
No.
So yeah, I was counting up. I think I counted 11, but I might have been counting the Ronnies and the no and the Trust No One
Hmm. Right.
in there. Hawk, I expected to hit for value, or you were discarding some good stuff. And Yeah, I don't know. I burned Hawk early. I was not feeling great about that, but I was
Hmm.
like, I don't know. So
Yeah,
this
and I followed it up with the safe house the turn after you played it.
you did, you did. Um, this is an interesting question with respect to kind of tempo and initiative as well. Combugrieve has a lot of spicy artifacts, right? You've got the forge, you've got the scale, safe house. What else did you get? We got rid of the lucky dice. Is okay, not spicy, but
Yeah.
those three at least are potentially problematic. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know if I would hold Hawk for the right time with Poltergeist coming, but in a game where I'm hoping to get my advantage because you're working through chains, I felt more pressure to like just move some cards
Hmm.
and like try and
Yeah.
establish a board. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought, good school of thought to just say like, hey, like I have the initiative, they're chained, just play my pips, don't slow myself down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it was just good timing for me that you played the hawk on turn two and I already had the safe house.
Mm-hmm.
But I never used the safe house. I got no value out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was there all game, and I never. Well, you did destroy it eventually, but and that's how you got the Ronnie back, right?
That's how I got the Ronnie back. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could discard it, but that ended up costing me big. That you were able to archive the Ronnie.
Yeah. That's an interesting one too. It's like you discard the safe house, and then are you committing yourself to discarding Essence Scale and O Forge as well?
Yeah, there's no way. No, this deck needs to burn through your R and get some value out of these. Um, and the Essence Scale, or not the Essence Scale. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the Essence Scale and the Obsidian Forge got me like a little bit of tempo to like present that threat to you. That like, yeah, like can use a few creatures and get some extra amber and then forge. So they offered something there for me.
Yeah. I mean, the O Forges reach, right? And they can both conspire to uh, put you in a position to forge there or get some extra value. Um, like there are definitely times where you'll uh, center Val with Obsidian Forge, play your uh, play your Rizzo, right, and then all of a sudden you get that two steal out of nowhere because of with Ethan Scale from your Shadows dude that
Mm.
was just chilling. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that it gave me some thought to go with Emerald was that um, there's not a lot of creatures in Combi Group. There's like five per house.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very unlikely to be able to board flood and just reap
Mm-hmm.
against a little bit of a weaker um, creature control suite in Emerald. So that was something interesting I noticed, and it definitely came into play where I could not get a board in a single house, and I had trouble centering Val because there's not a ton of Star Alliance creatures, and there's not a ton of creatures in other houses. So like once I had Val out late, I needed to play two creatures of a house to get her centered, and that's very hard to do.
Yeah, it definitely got to a point where I was leaving creatures on board to keep you from being able to easily center Val. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you'd have kept more on board. You could have not fought that Drekker that turn. That would have been nice.
you know, I think I fought Drekker's neighbor just for the record. But yeah,
Yeah, it was the Trigon, I think.
Lieutenant Trigon.
Uh,
Cool. Well, it was a fun one. Ended up being close. Yeah, Combat Grief has
Maybe
tools.
actually, maybe it wouldn't have been close if not for the rigged lottery.
Maybe not. You think that was,
I'm not sure.
yeah, too risky
I
of a
was pretty
play?
happy with that. I don't know if it was too risky of a play, but I was pretty happy with the end result of that.
I yeah, I don't know. I knew it was a risky play. My thinking was I didn't want you to have the option to sit on Anthony any longer, and I wanted you to have 3 to steal with Brend. I would have been super sad if it pushed you into Obsidian Forge range. It
It almost did.
was
I got
close.
I got three from it, I think, or four.
Let's ask. Rig lottery. Do do do.
Three.
3. Hmm.
And then oh, and Bren gave me the fourth. That's where the fourth came from.
Yep.
Yeah. So it would have had to completely whiff for you to not get any value out of Brend.
Yep. Huh. Oh, did you just count it? Interesting. Oh, gains 3 amber. Yep, and I gained 1. I gained 1?
Yeah.
Rigged.
See?
Rigged.
Yeah, it barely put you into check. No, you had nine actually, because you ended up stealing. No, you reaped twice. Yeah.
Twice. Did not put me out of Bruno range because that Bruno has a capture pip.
Yeah. But I don't think I had shuffled at this point, did I?
Perhaps not.
I don't think so.
I think you had.
Yes, I did. You're right.
Yeah.
The second time through the deck was a lot faster. And not just because of the chains, it just felt like, I don't know.
Rig
I was,
lottery helped, and then there wasn't any
oh,
other.
that's true. The rigged lottery did cycle a lot.
But even still, yeah. I mean, it works through some clogs. Cool. Well, I know, fun one. Fun one.
Yeah, good game.
Cool decks. Some old favorites to dust off. Did it
Yeah.
feel like a battle of tempo decks to close things out? I guess.
Not really. I think the chains really changed that.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, that is something to think about for the follow up.
I wonder, is there something there where like chains push you from the middle and push one deck into more of like a rush, like a true rush roll, or more of a grind roll? I don't know.
That could be.
Not asking with an idea behind it, just wondering out loud. Yeah.
I think Emerald did move into a rush roll there.
I was definitely trying to make ground as fast as I could, as opposed to playing more reactively, which I may have. Although there were some quiet turns, but yeah, I don't know. That was fun. Be a good one to
Yeah,
reflect on.
it is.
All right. Well, wrap it up there. Thanks for hanging out in the chat with us, folks. Yeah, see you around the lab.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.